recording? Hello. Okay, here we go. Well, I want to welcome you to the next live stream in our Day of Light and Love. And I'm Jeanne Fritch, and I have the honor to host this event today. I am really excited to be able to bring our next contributor to this live stream because her story is, well, it's a stunning story of acceptance and overcoming and ultimately forgiveness. And so we have a lot to learn from Scherr. She is a roving ambassador for world peace, a teacher, and an author. And I'm just really excited for people to get to know you, Kia. If we could start with just maybe you fill in a little bit of background story for people who maybe this is the first time that they've heard of you, or maybe they've heard of you but they don't know the story. How do you feel about that?
All right. It's a good way to begin because my work right now has the event that happened gave birth to what is happening now, we could say. And that particular birth, unfortunately, began with a tragic death and loss. Some of you, I don't know if you remember, it was around Thanksgiving time in 2008, 9 years ago. And there was a terror attack in Mumbai, India. And 10 terrorists entered the shores of Mumbai in a fishing village, and 10 of them broke up into groups of 2 and proceeded to go to various targets that had been planned for months. A couple of 5-star hotels and the Jewish Center and the train station and a local cafe where many tourists and locals, a well-known cafe there in South Mumbai. And my husband and 13-year-old daughter, Naomi, were on a meditation retreat there with a group of people, Australians, Canadians, and Americans. They were all part of the Synchronicity Foundation. And my husband actually had been the coordinator of that retreat. The spiritual director had studied meditation in the traditional form in Ganeshpuri, which is outside of Mumbai, for 12 years, and had been initiated as a Vedic monk, and then modernized meditation by creating technology. So the purpose of that retreat was to introduce high-tech meditation to the people there. So they were having evening meditations and then visiting temples and so forth during the day. And it was a 14-day trip. They were 10 days into it, having the time of their lives. The sights, the sounds, the colors, the music, the culture. It's an amazing culture and just incredible. And I encourage anyone to visit India if you have any inkling whatsoever. I would highly encourage it. But the terrorist attack happened, and they had had their evening meditation, and a group of them either were in their rooms or in the business center, or they were in the restaurant having their dinner. Some of them had already left to go up to their rooms, but there were 6 people at the table finishing up when 2 terrorists rounded the corner. And the restaurant opened up to the lobby, and this was at the Oberoi Hotel. It was completely open there, and they had heard shots that sounded like firecrackers. And because there's lots of firecrackers that go off in India all the time for weddings and there's celebrations going on all the time. And so people said, oh, no worries, it's firecrackers. But as they got closer, my husband was at the head of the table in the corner and saw these 2 men with the AK-47s and just shouted for everyone to get under. And everyone in the restaurant dove under. And at that point, the terrorists just went table to table, basically, shooting. And Alan and Naomi did not survive that attack. Now, miraculously, the 4 other people at their table once the terrorists left, were able to crawl into the kitchen wounded, and the staff got them into taxis and off to the hospital. Now, I was in Florida at the time, where I am now, visiting my family for Thanksgiving. I have 2 grown sons, parents, brothers, sisters, and we got the call that Mumbai was being attacked and that hotel was attacked, and we had to just watch on the news all of this unfold. We reported to the State Department that we had family there, and we were given, we had a call that everyone in our group had been accounted for and were safe in their rooms except for Alan and Naomi, and that they were last seen in the restaurant, but it was not confirmed what happened. They said, Alan, we think he took a shot to the head. Naomi was hiding, but we don't know where they are. It was just unconfirmed. And because we thought maybe they were in the hospital, maybe unconscious, my son posted their photos on CNN. And this is a really important part of the story, because then their photos got shown around the world. And human beings, being compassionate creatures at our core, began to send messages of love and prayers. And we were getting these first through the CNN iReport, and then the Synchronicity Foundation began getting emails. We got calls from friends we hadn't heard from in years, and cousins starting prayer trains, and all of this was going on. I believe one of our friends from India was very close to Eckhart Tolle, and he was in touch with her, and he was meditating. And then other spiritual groups were also having special meditations around this. But then it was on the Friday morning at 6 a.m., the phone rang, and I knew that was it.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really unfathomable. It's very difficult to really wrap my mind around that. You know,
Well,
it
as you
is.
can see, time doesn't take away the piercing of the heart from a loss like that. But on the other hand, what was also going on simultaneously, and what I want to continue to bring out over and over, and this has been my survival as well, is the love and the light. This is about love and light. Well, that was there in abundance. And once the news was reported that they in fact died in these attacks, there were over 1,000 emails that were sent to addressed to me specifically, from Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Jews, people from all over the world, every continent, sending love. And it was just the most amazing thing. And, you know, we all would philosophically certainly agree that we're one world family. We'd say, of course, yes, of course we are. But to experience it like that, personally and directly, this event alone, of course, would change my life in many ways, because it ended and I had to start over. But that impact of feeling the world family on such a personal level inside of me, it was no longer there's this inner world, the outer world. It was truly one world. Truly one world. And it was that spurred me onward to also in communication with the other people affected by this, especially our immediate group. We all together, it's like, how do we bring this forward? What is it that we see here? It's compassion, it's love. And as we watched the aftermath of the news, I saw the photograph of the lone surviving terrorists. All of the terrorists were killed in the attack except for one, who was heroically captured by Mumbai police, and who lost his life in the process. And so how do we bring that forward? What is the message here? What is this teaching us? Life is sacred, is it not?
Yes.
It's what we most value. And it comes to the forefront when these things happen. Those deep extremes and contrasts bring it to our attention more powerfully. Normally, it's just in the background. It's all there, but it's in the background. We don't have to think about it. We're just living. We don't have to think about it. We take it for granted. There's nothing wrong with that. That's natural. We're just living. But all of a sudden, when these things happen, boom. And we see it over and over these past few years. This year alone, there have been incidents that, boom, there it is. And what do you see? People, all the messages come forth, the same thing. Who are we? We are love. We are connected. It should not have happened. It did happen. So now what are we going to do? Then we stand up for who we really are in the process. We need to now practice it all the more to counterbalance it. We are not terrorists. Maybe we could say, well, there's an inner terrorist that lurks inside all of us, certainly. That voice that is judgmental and lashes out at times when we lose our connection. So I saw the face of the lone surviving terrorist, and it was clear that this young man had completely lost his connection to who he was, and certainly to the rest of humanity. There was no humanity, none. His eyes were vacant, void, devoid of light. But he allowed himself to be shut down by those that were controlling him and had adopted distorted beliefs about what life was, and that it was important to kill as many people as possible, to do the opposite of what life is. And so to counterbalance that, we affirm life even more. We honor the sacredness and oneness of life, because that is who we really are. And the more that we can bring that to the forefront of our awareness in our own life, the way we live our everyday lives in our small ways, the more we can prevent our own inner terrors from emerging. And maybe in schools, businesses, governments, the way we operate, we would bring that in.
Yes.
And that's sort of what that is. It is what brought forth everything else that has unfolded since then, and finding ways to create a structure to do that.
Well, there is a process to move from, okay, so you experienced the reaching out, and that kind of opened doors, opened your mind.
Huge doors, yeah.
And when did the forgiveness piece come into place?
Okay, yes. I got the words of Christ came to my awareness. Forgive them, they know not what they do. And I went, yes, of course. Of course. They know not what they do. Can I do better? Yes, and I will. And that's what I'm dedicated to. And so I spoke that aloud to my family, and they all said, what? What do you mean? And I said, love is lacking here. So we must send them our love and compassion. Now that came because my heart had been cracked open, my mind had been cracked open. I was not thinking about this or planning anything. It just came out. Later, I did say this in a news conference, and there was silence. And it was very interesting because not one of those reporters from all the major news stations questioned it or argued with it. It was because there's a ring of truth to it.
Yes.
Do we really know what it means? Did I really know what it meant? I'm not sure I did. It did feel like the truth. A ray of peace entered my heart. And I thought, yes, that's going to be the anchor to hold on to, is love. Now, it's been 9 years, and now I've had a chance to explore what that means and put that into practice, and to gain an understanding for myself what it means, and then share with other people what I've learned.
Can you share some of that? What you now do? I know that you there's a book that you wrote, the Pocketbook of Peace.
Oh, right. Well, yes, that came about because we were, how do you, how do you go about this? How do you, we created a nonprofit organization dedicated to that message, to engage in the conversation, which is what we're doing right now, to engage in the conversation about the oneness and sacredness of life, and to honor it in ourselves and each other. Very simple. And then we launched that in the United States, the first anniversary. The second, I launched it in Mumbai with a group of our survivors. 12 of them came back along with
Oh my goodness.
and we were all sponsored to do that by Mr. Oberoi himself. We all stayed there. And then I stayed on to begin to create programs. And I spent most of my time back and forth for 6 years after that to work with the police and the schools and so forth, business. So, but the Pocketbook of Peace came up as a way to bring focus to it in everyday life, to help people structure it and to break it down into pieces. So it is about creating inner and outer peace, and it's about respecting the dignity of life is another way to say that. Honor the sacredness of life. The same thing as respect the dignity of our differences, the dignity of life in ourselves and in each other. And what is that? The golden rule, which we all know. And it's in every major religion. Everybody knows about it and seen it. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Love your neighbor as yourself. So this book is the answer to that is, well, how do we do that? Okay, I'll help get you started. Maybe you could think of lots of other ways that you will. So I was called back to Florida to take care of my mother who was dying of lung cancer in 2011. And I decided to write all this out day by day after my meditation. Okay, day one, slow down. We can't honor anything or notice it unless we slow down first. Because we're so busy, busy, busy. Busy, busy, busy. There's always so much to do. We don't take time to be or to slow the pace. So in the midst of our doing, we can notice the little parts of it that we can appreciate, pay attention to, so that we don't miss a moment of it, so that we don't take it for granted. And then, smile, breathe, acceptance. Acceptance is the first step toward forgiveness. Acceptance, because life happens. Life is, reality happens. And people are the way they are, whether it's our best friend who we love and we just have a disagreement with, our family members who people make choices that we would not make in small ways and big ways. Now, the extreme example of that would be the terrorist. So how do you forgive how do you forgive a terrorist? Like, what is that all about? It's really not about the terrorist. The terrorist has done what they're going to do. There are consequences to those actions, and that must be followed. The law of the land must be followed. All those pieces had to fall into place, and they did. 4 years later, the lone surviving terrorist was executed by hanging in India, and that was the law of the land. And all of that is appropriate for that situation, for what happened. So what's going on within me or with any of us when we're not forgiving? We're not giving is the key. Something shuts down inside of us. We are contracted. We are not experiencing love. So we shut ourselves off to love in the process. So who suffers from that? We do.
Yes.
We limit ourselves, we could say. So when we are for giving, we continue giving. We continue giving forth of ourselves. We meet life where it is. And there are times when we are not going to like what is being presented to us, not in the least. But there it is. Okay, open. Okay, what do I do? How am I going to handle this? What do I do? First acceptance, and then what's the most appropriate, responsible way? What's required of me now is the questions to ask. And then handle that with respect. Love. Love is respect. It's not passive in the least. It doesn't mean lie down and let people walk all over you. No, it means let's talk. Let's change something. What changes do we need to make? What needs to be adjusted here? What's just not going to work? So we're not dealing with those kind of terrorists out that are further away from us. But what do we have to deal with in our everyday life, even in traffic, at the grocery store, at the bank? You never really know. Within our own life, organizing ourselves.
Yes. I think families have a lot of fallout from non-forgiveness. I see that a lot because I work with a lot of, in relationships and that. And I often think the prescription is so simple, actually. But we get in the way, we get in the way.
That's right. We get in the way. And people are going to be the way they are. And we cannot change that. Just because we would make other choices, we would choose other ways of being, or maybe we'd prefer other ways. So what? We can be how we want to be as best as we can and allow people to be the way they are, and simply to communicate and ask questions when needed. And that's really what forgiveness is being put into practice. It's not just saying, I forgive you, and then walking away and not being dynamically involved in the process. And I think that was where I realized it's not about the other person. We can't do anything about that. It's not, what it is not allowing separation and judgment to occur. If we say, I forgive you, in that way, we're creating judgment, which creates separation.
Yes.
That is not true forgiveness. That means we're shut down. We are not being loving. That is not forgiveness. So that's what I learned. I had to, go through all of that myself and come to a lot of realizations about all of that. Because I had this big thing that happened, but in the meantime, life happens. Life continues to happen.
Yeah.
So we continue to be with it, and it's an unfoldment. And the greatest liberation is to learn to continue to stay open and give forth and release whatever is inside of us that is causing the shutdown. Release those negative, which would be contractive. It's shutting us down. Open it back up, releasing it to the totality of our being, because we're all going to be a mixture of it. But we don't want that to rule our lives. We don't have to be ruled by unforgiveness or fear or hatred, anger, feelings of revenge. We can liberate ourselves, and then we can live a more fulfilling, happy life as a result. We can have inner peace, and then we contribute to outer peace.
You were you recently, is there a documentary film that is coming out in 2018?
Yes, it is. Yes. And until it's officially released, I don't know that I'm allowed to say the title of it, other than we did it. It was made by an independent filmmaker from Mumbai who is an artist and working with a major production company there. And I have the great honor of being 1/3 of the film. It's 3 stories that took place in India that were violent murders, and the family members chose forgiveness, and it will cover those stories in depth, and my story is one of those stories.
And so the documentary is on forgiveness.
Yes, that is the major theme.
The theme.
And what it is, what it isn't, how it transforms and changes people's lives.
Well, you've mentioned that it transformed you. Um, I'm going to take a quote from what you said earlier, that time doesn't take away the piercing of the heart. And how do you feel that you're changed today, as you
How am I
stand
not
today?
changed? The question would be easier to say, how am I not changed? But every little particle went through a metamorphosis. Certainly there was a going into the cocoon period, so that's an analogy that really fits, withdrawing it to some extent, although I was going to Mumbai, but there was certainly a lot of cocoon activity there as well, a lot of alone time.
Mm-hmm. So
But
if someone is watching this and they, maybe they dealt with a violent death, someone close to them, or even sometimes forgiveness is something that was done to a person that maybe wasn't violent, but leaves some significant scarring, we'll say. Um, what 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 words would you have for them if they were to catch this replay?
I think it's really important one of the big things that I learned, and it would be a major change, is to meet that experience fully, no matter what it is and whatever it includes, and to not be afraid of any of the emotions that come forth. And I think some of your other people have talked about that too, that you were interviewing, that whatever comes forth, it's the life within us coming forth. Embrace it with love, be with it. That means just to be with it. It doesn't mean that we like it. That's a different thing. We don't have to like it. But to be with it is being loving. Be with it and let it be as it is, and be with ourselves as it is. And then it begins to be transmuted. And that's when it begins to continue, so that we can continue to engage with life, so that we don't shut down. And that is another major change. And the more we do that, the more we're connected to all of life, the more we're able to stay connected not only to ourselves, but with every other person, so that the connections are instantaneous, strangers are not strangers anymore. That's something that I noticed. It's a much more intimate relationship with life itself that we allow, when we allow those things to be there and accept it. And it's time. It takes time. It is a process. And to share your feelings and not isolate yourself, to talk with other people about it, and to be honest about your feelings, and not feel like you have to get over it. Or if someone who means well says, time to get over it, know that they mean well, but that's not necessarily true. Or when people say, stay busy, they mean well, but that's not necessarily a good idea. No. If you have things to do, wonderful, do them, but don't try to just stay busy to distract. No, take the time and create a balance between alone time and also being with other people who will just be with you. And let them know that you don't need necessarily to talk about, just to be with. Company, presence.
That's probably the best question to ask you. How can others most serve someone who's moving through the acceptance and the layers of acceptance that lead ultimately to forgiveness?
Yeah,
how do we serve? Do you know what I'm saying? So if my experience is that do you know what I mean? I'm not on that end, but I'm part of it because I certainly know enough people who are.
Yes. And it's a beautiful question, because I do believe that people are well-meaning and they're compassionate. And I think sometimes these things are so big, especially a death, whether it's a tragic, violent loss like this or just normal death, you don't know what to say because the emotions are there. And because we don't know what words to say, we either avoid the person altogether, or we end up saying something that's not really helpful. But I think the thing that's really helpful is to be honest and to say, I feel for you. I don't know what to say. There are no words, but I'm here for you. And please call me. I'd love to see you. Would you like to get together next week? And then follow up with them. Don't think, oh,
Yes.
I don't want to bother them. Because I know from my case that I probably wouldn't reach out on my own because it's just a funny thing. Sometimes you can get in a little bit of a shell, but if someone calls me, I'm very responsive. So I think other people may be that way too. Just call and say, just want to know, would you like to come over for coffee? Or, I just made some cookies and I love to bring them by. Just making those little things makes a huge difference. And just to take the initiative more. And then I think that, and then I've learned to take more initiative myself also. So I realize I don't have to be alone all the time. Tons of people be happy to, I just have to pick up the phone and talk or go out and, I've had to learn all those little things. It's awkward, but.
And I guess I want to clarify here. When the person reaches out like that to someone, like say I'm reaching out to a brother-in-law, who
Yes.
or his wife passed. I'm just reaching out, but I am available.
Yes.
If the conversation goes in that direction, I am fully available, but that's not, I don't take the conversation. I'm just willing to experience whatever, and I let that person kind of take the lead in what they need.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's a good point because what I appreciate too is if it's someone that also knew my husband and daughter, I love it when they share an experience, when they say, I miss them too. And yes, we might shed a few tears. That'll pass in a moment or two. That's okay. I'm not afraid to do that. And it's okay. So people should know it's fine to, if you need to cry for a minute or two, fine. But share the experience. I love it when people say, oh, I just loved it when I learned so much that maybe things I didn't know that happened. People will share little things. I love hearing those things. And they say, yeah, I miss him too. The last time I saw him.
Thank you. That was a really good clarification there, because I know that I often struggle with that. I try to just be present instinctively, right? But it's nice to have the validation that that's exactly, sometimes when you're there as the person that's on the periphery, right? You want to be available, and there's an awkwardness to it because
Yes.
you're as relaxed as you can be, but the awkwardness, I think, comes from it's new. This is not ever, whatever this event is, it's not happened before, right? In that context, and it's tender. There's a tenderness
That's it.
to.
That's the word. It's tender. That's perfect.
Yeah. And so I appreciate that. I think that helps anybody who's working or around anyone who has gone through any kind of a loss. We spoke briefly about the pocketbook of peace. You have that to raise up and show?
Yeah.
I know we talked about, oh, I love it.
Yeah, and I actually took some time and wrote up some applications specifically for loss in the grieving process to renew life and become re-engaged with life. So it's just on a couple of pages, and I wrote a little paragraph. How does each of these things apply to that process? So I do have that available, and I'm happy to share that with people, or if you'd like to contact me, I'd happy to be in conversation with them about it.
And we're definitely going to put your contact information when we post the replay, which is that's we're going to put that so that and there's a link, I believe. I know that you talked about Can you talk a little bit before we go off? I know we've run over our time, but who cares? This is really good stuff.
Okay.
Um, what how are people using, I think we spoke and you referenced that kind of like study groups or focus groups that everyone's reading and doing it daily. It's a 30-day, is that what it is?
The idea was 30 days because it takes at least 21 days to create habits or to break a habit. And the idea is to create a new habit by keeping the momentum going. So, and then once a week talk about, I think it works well in a group that meets anyway, like a book group. And
Yes.
it's not a long book to read, it's more experiential.
Yeah.
And I kept it short and sweet so that it would be experiential. So you're the teacher of yourself by learning through experience and then talking about it to reinforce the experience. That's what it's meant to do. And so we use this with the Mumbai police, so they would apply these things to build trust and community. In schools, teachers have used it as a self-reflective journaling process so that students bring it into their life, and it creates more interactive discussions in the classroom of a very positive nature. Women's groups tend to like this, and in business, you apply it to productivity. I wrote applications for productivity, and we used it with this digital application company in Mumbai. And the HR person sent out the daily email. They went out by email. I met with teams every week for shorter meetings because there were about 6 teams. So we had 20-minute meetings. How did you apply all of this to become more productive? We sent the paragraph to point them in that direction. Like, how would slowing down make you more productive? At first, it seems like the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
But when you slow down, you pay more attention, you make less mistakes, so therefore you are more productive.
For
So
sure.
you also get more ideas. So
Yes.
it's interesting. More ideas come to you because you're not just rushing. So it's interesting how things you wouldn't expect applied in business. Whoa, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yes. I heard a phrase once, go slow to go fast.
Absolutely. Yes, exactly. And I have a quote in there that slow down and what you're chasing will come up and catch you.
Oh my goodness, that's fabulous. Oh, I love that. That's amazing. Well, I know that I am actually I'm inspired to start a focus group, a study group. I have 6 of us. I'm hoping to expand it to 8 to 10. But I just think it's fabulous. I can't wait to do it. I'm going to get those books ordered, and I cannot wait to start it. And I look forward to that documentary coming out.
Yes.
I want to tell you that you're amazing, and I say that not to flatter you, but just a statement of the truth. It is an amazing thing that I just witnessed. I feel like I'm completely changed, even though we've spoken before. It really, there were some insights today, and I know that you just helped a whole lot of people. I hope we keep this replay live for quite some time because many people need to learn from this. So I thank you, Kia. I thank you very much.
Thank you for providing the opportunity, making the arrangements, organizing it so well, making it available in this way, recording it. We're collaborating here. So
Yes.
we work together, and yes, I have had a chance to discover, I guess, the amazingness of life where I never thought of it that way before. And now I do. And it strikes me every day in some way or another. So I'm just here to share that and to ignite that within whoever happens to be inspired by it. Then together we can all experience a more amazing life.
Absolutely. And we will get your links posted so people can contact you, and we'll let them know how to get in touch with you, how to get a hold of the book, and move many people's lives forward because of this tool. So thank you again very much, Kia.
Thank
Appreciate you spending this time with us today.
Great pleasure. Bye, everyone.